Not the Footy Show.
I want to start with the whole we're not going to call ourselves St. George Illawarra anymore thing. It's just a bit of a... You heard about that, didn't you?
Yeah.
Just as a bit of an indication of, they're really addressing the important things at Dragonland.
Yeah.
G'day, everybody. Welcome to episode 277 of Not the Footy Show. I'm Warrick Nicolson. You've got Robb Cox over there on the screen as well. And to kick off our team, not by team, because we won't do every team, kick off our look at our deep dives in the 2023 season even. It's going to be St. George Dragons, mate, because we can't call them the St. George Illawarra Dragons anymore, apparently, because marketing, it forbids us spreading our team too thinly over a model.
Is that official? Is that official now? Have they dropped the St. George Illawarra Dragons?
It's funny you say that because a couple of years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, they changed the logo online. Did you remember this?
Yep.
They got rid of the badge that said St. George Illawarra, and it was just a more cartoon version of the dragon.
Yeah, I do remember that.
And the reason given at the NRL at the time was that the image was too hard to replicate on the app if they kept it as the shield with the detailed dragon in the middle. That was the reasoning.
Right. Okay.
So that's why you don't see the dragon as prevalent on the NRL app, etc. And then they sent this questionnaire out to their members, if there are any left, saying, if we had to change the name of the team, what would you like? And a bunch of options they had. And one of the options they had was the Dragons, which last time I checked is a big issue that the poor old Redcliffe team is going to have because they're not Redcliffe. They can't be called Redcliffe. We can't have them be called Redcliffe.
The Dolphins.
So now we've got two teams from if the Dragons ended up becoming the Dragons. And what I thought was very interesting about that was that there was when that story broke, there was a news release put out by the Dragons. And that's how they refer to themselves in the whole news release. The Dragons.
That's the Dragons.
There was no St. George and there was no Illawarra. Funnily enough, it was the release about Talatau Moni getting rolled up in jail. But I did find the timing very interesting. And so I guess before we dive too deeply into how the team's going to go and we think of their roster, you're a Saints man originally. You weren't an Illawarra man.
No.
How do you think this whole St. George Illawarra split / joint venture has been handled from both sides in the last 20 odd years that it's been around? It's 24 years, I think, this year.
You know what? When it first happened, the joint venture, there was always murmurings from the Illawarra fans, either they aren't wearing the Illawarra jersey enough or that straight red jersey they got. We don't, we feel like we're outsiders. And I think that's very, very much quietened down, except for the real parochial, hardcore Steelers fans that think somehow they're going to come back. I just don't understand it now. I would have understood it 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I just don't understand it now. They've won a comp.
St. George Illawarra.
St. George Illawarra. They are basically based in Wollongong.
Correct.
They play a few games a year in Cogra. I don't know what it is. It's obviously probably just some old heads at Cogra that want to. I think just let it be. I hate it when traditions change. I'm not really into big. I'm a bit of a traditionalist. I didn't particularly like the amalgamation of two clubs in the beginning, but now that it's been going for what year did it come in?
99 was the first season.
99. So it's nearly 25 years.
It's a long time.
Just leave it. Just leave it. When marketing departments start making decisions like this, ask Manly how their marketing department went last year.
Yeah.
Just ask them. Marketing departments should be all about making money, but not messing with tradition. I say leave it alone. I say they're the St. George Illawarra Dragons, and that's the way it should stay.
The mentality is that they change it to the Dragons and it attracts more people. That's the mentality coming from marketing.
It doesn't.
It's insanity.
It doesn't. All it does, I'll tell you what it does do. When you don't attach to a locale, what it does do, it opens you up to pissing off to Perth.
Ooh, Perth
That's
Dragons.
what it opens.
Hello.
That's what it opens up to. I mean, they're not real. They're not really. Who are they? They don't really have a home. Are they Cogra? Are they Wollongong? They don't even really want to be part of Wollongong. Why don't we ship them off to Perth? Hold on to your fans. Embrace your fans. Hold on to your locale. Make it tribal. Could you imagine Manly ever going to Perth?
Yeah, I know. Can you imagine Manly going to Gosford? Oh, wait, they tried that deliberately.
And what happened there?
And destroyed North in the process.
And they annoyed everybody.
I find it funny that when you've got a team that is so synonymous with being called Saints or the Red V or Dragons or whatever you like, that they think that there's a monumental shift to attract new people by getting rid of Illawarra. It's insanity. It's just Illawarra needs to be in the name of that team forever because that's who supplies the players to that team for a start. And the fans down there don't deserve to be treated like this, especially when this went out to members. This went out to members. It wasn't just we'll put it out in the media and see what reaction it gets.
See what reaction.
To members first. So you actually deliberately offended your people that are half your club. Or
it's offensive. I don't like it. It's offensive. I think that, and I actually do think, I'll bring it up. I said it before, but I actually do think they should wear the all red jersey a little bit more often.
It should be. I'm not saying every game in Wollongong should be wearing the Steeler knockoff, and every game at Cogra.
Look, I think it should be. I think that they should be wearing that all red jersey at least 2 or 3 times a year. And when they get to play in retro round, it should be with that old Steelers jersey. Because they really don't tip their hat enough to the locality of Wollongong, and I think they should do more often. But look, that's all just window dressing. That's a distraction. This is
surely you want to look at the quality of the team you put together, because that New South Wales Cup is yours, Coxsmith.
I don't think they're going to.
They're horrible.
They're not even going to win that, mate.
Okay, I sent you a list of the roster, and I really struggled to come up with a starting pack in the front row and your bench, because you've got just a lot of just pure averageness. And it's so much so that I can't even say that the joke I've been running with you're going to win the New South Wales Cup. It's not going to happen either, because there's just such a lack of quality, especially in the forward pack.
Look, here's the biggest problem for me, mate. And I don't know if I can blame Coach Griffin, but I'm going to, because he is overseeing it all, is that their recruitment has been diabolical. They're buying old blokes. They're buying old blokes, and the Tigers went through this a few years ago, buying old blokes. Doesn't figure out. It's not an old bloke's game. Mm-hmm. Rugby league is not an old man's game. But this team of yours that you've written here, and you've grabbed it from their top 30, mate, if this is their team, and there can't be anything else, because this is all they've got.
It's all they've got.
They ain't making the top 10.
No.
They'll be lucky to make the top 12. Let me go through it.
Before you do that, let's quickly announce who they've gained and lost, because that's important to influence this. So Ben Murdoch-Masila is your big name forward.
Yes.
And Jacob Little is your big name playmaker. That's
There's
it.
also Zane Musgrove as well.
Musgrove. Yeah, sorry.
Who came in at the end of last year.
So that's 3. You got 3 players adding, and you farewelled Andrew McCullough, Josh Maguire, Tarek Sims. They're your big 3 losses. They're 3. They're significant parts of what your team was.
And
plus
let's
Jackson
not forget
Ford, Jack Gweski, George Burgess, and Pawasa Famasili. So you've lost a lot.
Yeah, and before
the same thing.
So the team, in probably their best team here would be Tyrell Sloan at fullback, Matt Feeney on one wings, Moses Sully and Zach Lomax in the centres, Michaeli Ravalawa on the other wing. Talatai Amone, we won't know how much game time he's going to get this year at 5'8". Ben Hunt, and captain and halfback. Front row is a Blake Laurie and Francis Molo. Hooker at this stage would probably be Jayden Sullivan to start off with. Jaden Sewer and Jack Bird in the back row, and Jack DeBellon at 13. And then that leaves, and I think that's pretty much set in stone, because there's not a lot of other options here. And there aren't too many options in the outside backs. But let me just go through the proposed bench that you've tossed up, which would be Zane Musgrave, Aaron Woods, Cody Ramsay, Moses Mbai. Now, if that's the team, and look, I tend to agree with that team for the most part. Your big name signings, Masilla and Little, don't make that 17. I guess some glass half full people say, oh, but it just adds to the strength of the extras. Well, let me go through the extras. And there's really only one or two here who have got first grade experience. And so we've got Billy Burns, Tyrell Mayono, Tautau Moga, Max Feeney, Jacob Little, Ben Murdoch-Masila, Michael Mollo, Jayden Hunt, Nick Louis Tosso, Connor Mulheisen, Josh Corrick, Sione Fanau, Jackson Sherab, Haili Fanau, Dan Russell, Ryan Couchman, Toby Couchman, and Trey Stewart. Good luck if you know more than half of those guys, because I know that more than the other one. Yep. And Josh Kerr. We forgot Josh Kerr.
I've got at him before,
who would probably, in my opinion, be on the bench sooner than Cody Ramsay. But I know that you put this together, at late notice.
And it's more. Do they adjust like some teams are doing, where you carry an outside back and you carry your hooker on your bench, like some teams have been doing?
Anyone that thinks that team is impressive needs to put down the water pipe and stop using it daily, because those drugs will hurt your mind. I think it's loaded with old blokes, and I'm not even talking about real good old blokes. I've got to say it for what I think, mate, and I'm not being one of those crazy St George fans, because I'm almost at the point now where I don't even tell anyone who I go for.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a little embarrassing. But when you sign the likes of, and look, I've got stuck into Woodsy a few times.
Yep.
At least he still has a bit of a go.
Yeah.
But he's certainly past his best.
Yeah, the game's past him in terms of him being an effective middle anymore.
But look, unfortunately, the Tigers got rid of Jacob Little because he had a history of not performing and getting injured. Worse than not performing, because you can, some players go through their playing career not performing at the highest level, but being consistent and always being there. And, every club needs those kind of players. Jacob Little gets injured too. He's had some, season-ending injuries year after year after year after year, usually leg injuries.
Yeah.
Saints have thought it was a great idea to sign him. Well done. Ben Murdoch-Masila, geez, I don't know how old Ben is, but
he was busted last year, and he wasn't effective at all. He looked overweight.
His best years were 7 years ago.
His best years were in England. And Musgrave's another bench rotation player. Yeah, I didn't mind what I saw from last year. He was okay, but
I thought he was all right last year. I don't think he's the worst signing that Griffin's made, but there is a problem at St George attracting players, and there has been since Bennett left.
Yeah.
There's a problem at St George attracting players, and St George Illawarra, attracting players.
I was going to say, is it because they're mentioned as part of Illawarra, and people just go, I don't like Illawarra, drop them off the name. Terrible.
It might be the other way around, mate. If you got a choice to live in the beautiful south coast or Cogra, I know
where I'm living.
I'm going down coast. But yeah, mate, look, a very unimpressive team. I don't think, you know, I look at a team and I say to myself, if I was building a team now, who would I want out of this team? Who would I want? And I reckon there's about 2 players that I'd want, and Ben Hunt ain't one of them. I like when he's playing really, really well. I like the look of Jayden Sullivan. And to be fair, I probably like the look of Moses Suli.
Yeah.
One of coach's
It's funny
signings.
you don't have Lomax there, and I'm the same. There's something about Lomax and his inability to be disciplined.
No.
He just screams that he's just out for what he can do, rather than
I'm not.
And that disappoints me.
I haven't seen too much. It's impressive, or not enough for me to really take too much notice. But I'll tell you, Jayden Sullivan can be exciting as well. But we'll see what he does.
Well, let's talk about him. Let's talk about him, because he's the key. He's the key in this whole setup that Griffin's gone with. 3 months ago, when you still thought McCullough might be a chance coming back, and then they re-signed Ben Hunt, the word was that Sullivan wanted to leave.
That was the word. He wanted out.
We touched on this in Recruitment Whisperers, which was, well, hang on, if you stick around, mate, within 12 months you might be playing halfback. Well, not only that, he's now looming to me as the first choice hooker. I actually like this more than any other potential move for Saints this coming season, because it's something different. And you touched on before about the lack of ability to recruit players and the like. What stunned me about you talking about Jacob Little being let go by the Tigers and Saints signing him, which was, why didn't Saints go after Api Coruscant?
Probably Api wanted too much cash, mate.
Well,
you got to pay for the players.
Yeah, exactly. How do you improve your team? Because that's one area that they just needed something. They're playing Josh Maguire there at times last year. I like what he has about him that could reinvigorate this team. I think he might actually give Ben Hunt something to play with, which he hasn't had for a while at Saints, where he's just been the only guy. The question, though, becomes about Talatau Amone, which is if he's got this charge on him and he was in jail, he was locked up for a little bit. I think he's out now. But how much football does he play if he's deemed to have brought the game in disrepute and that whole stand-down policy?
Well, it's the stand-down policy is the one that's going to get him.
And what happens to Jayden Sullivan then? That's
he plays 6.
Does that stuff you up if you're Dragons? Because that means you've got to play Little or Mumbai at 9, don't you?
That's exactly what it means. It means that Mumbai then goes from being your utility to probably your number 1 9.
Yeah.
And there's almost no other team in the comp that would have him playing 9.
That's his best spot for the Saints. I think it's
correct.
His best spot for the Saints.
But is it okay? But to extend upon what I said before, can you imagine any other team in the comp playing Mumbai at 9? No. The biggest fear is that Amone doesn't play.
Yeah.
Okay. And Sullivan plays 6. I'd rather Sullivan earn his spot in the halves than kind of just go straight in there by default. But he can't help how he gets it.
Yeah.
But I think he'll learn more playing 9 in the beginning, and really just letting Ben Hunt make the calls than having to be that kind of organizer as well. So I think, mate, I don't hold great hopes for Saints this year, and I certainly don't hold great hopes for Griffin beyond this year coaching.
Well, he's got a big decision. Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say, he's kind of proven, in my mind, why Gus got rid of him at Penrith.
Yeah.
And Gus must have had an insight into what he thought about recruiting. Isn't there someone at Saints that oversees these recruitments?
It was Shane Flanagan.
And says,
the whole time he was apparently the recruitment guy, and he's sitting on Fox Sports pining for a new job. It's one of the great things, and the reason he didn't get called out for it was because he was on Fox. His mates looked after him.
Yeah, the recruitment's been very, very soft. And I'm saying that without inside knowledge as to who's been available and whatnot and how much Saints wanted to spend. But, these guys that they've got in their extended squad, there can't be too many of these blokes that are over 100 grand.
Mm.
So when you got that many, with all due respect, but when you've got that many Nevilles in the top 30, there must be some coin left over to buy a couple of big players.
Here's where it's going. Ben Hunt, we know, is over $1 million. All right. Lomax would be on
1.2.
high, probably on 7, I'd say at least. They massively overpaid him. Francis Molo signed for like 500 to be a bench rotation prop from the Cowboys. Sewell would be on big coin because I got him from South. Bird would be on a big deal.
Oh, I don't know if Bird's on that much.
The Bellin would be still on a big deal.
Yeah.
Then you got, what do they pay Woods? I don't know. Moses Sully,
can't be that much.
They got from Manly. They probably paid him well. And then you got all the money for the other players who had all this promise that who knows how much they paid Cody Ramsay. Who knows how much they're paying guys like Sloan, Ravalawa even. It all adds up. And that's the problem when you got a team that's middling, is that you're already spending heaps on these 5 or 6 players at the top. You haven't got the wiggle room to sign the Coruscant, I guess. So then you got to rely on the guys coming through. And this is where I wanted to talk about a couple of things, which is I've got Sloan there at fullback because I think he offers more to what could be their attack for Saints than what Ramsay.
Yeah, I do too.
Is it going to matter who Griffin picks in the grand scheme of things?
No, I don't think it matters. I don't think their season is going to hinge on having Sloan or Ramsay there.
Yeah, that's a massive problem. Because if you can, that should be a defining decision. But the rest of the team is just so meh that I'm kind of like, oh, it doesn't matter.
You know their biggest problem is, Saints? Their biggest, it's not a problem yet, but could be, if Ben Hunt does an ACL. Ben Hunt, as much as he's been, and I've had the boot into him as well a few times, but that comes with the territory. When you're the highest paid player, in the club and one of the top 3 or 4 paid players in the comp, you expect results, even if they're only personal results. Now, Ben Hunt has produced those results in the last couple of years, but when he first got there, it looked a bit, wishy-washy. We didn't know if we were going to get the best out of him. I think we probably have. We've gotten performances out of him that have changed games. The only thing that a lot of people forget is Ben Hunt's best performances last year weren't in red and white; they were in maroon,
and green and gold.
And green and gold. So Saints aren't getting value for money there. But that's neither here nor there for the moment. Everything hinges on Ben Hunt. We lose Ben Hunt, and the Saints could finish last, second last, third last. If they don't lose Ben Hunt, I say they finish 13th.
Wow. Yeah, we'll go to the tiers at the end, but it's in that second tier of sort of where we'll categorise some sides. There's a thing that came to me when I was putting this list together and just talking points. What's the last can't miss prospect in the forwards that you guys had? Because if you go back to like when your team got put together, there was a couple of players coming through that were like can't miss. There was Luke Bailey, there was Ben Cray, Jason Riles. They're just 3 that come to mind, all right? You had a bunch of young up-and-coming forwards who you just knew were going to be playing at a high level. What's the last one that the Saints have had? That's actually
probably Josh Kerr. Probably Josh Kerr.
But he's not in that.
But he's never gone on to the look. Josh Kerr before he debuted in NRL played All Stars, and it wasn't just as a gimme. He was. All-Stars. I know, but he was. Mate, I was at the game that he played against the Maori All Stars, and he was good. And I'm thinking, you beauty, Saints have got one here. Never really gone on. Never really. That was the same game that I believe Latrell. Was it that game that he kicked the field goal? May not have been. But anyway, it was a Maori All-Stars and the Indigenous All-Stars in Melbourne, probably about 4 years ago. And he was really good in that game. And I thought, great prospect. I'll tell you now that I got the games mixed up. That was the game Fafita basically just tore them apart. David Fafita. Unbelievable. Made some of the best runs I've ever seen in a game of footy. Anyway, but yeah, to answer your question, mate, I can't think. Jack de Belin.
Yeah, I think it like because I'm
Really?
looking at a rugby league project to work out who debuted. All right.
Yeah.
These are the debutants. That doesn't mean that they necessarily didn't play elsewhere beforehand, but just according to the thing, I'm looking through. It was Molo and Ruben last year, Amone, Fangai, Jayden Hunt, Sloan, Ramsay, Sullivan, etc., etc. Kerr was 2019. Reece Robson's probably the best prospect that you've had come through in the forwards.
We'll let him go.
And you let him go.
Ex-Australian schoolboy, by the way.
Laurie was the year before that. Okay, here's the guy. This is the bloke. Luciano is probably the best one you've had.
Yeah.
And you let him go pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Jacob Host debuted that year as well. Looking back. I'm still Jack Stock. No. Yeah, 2011. 2011, you had DeBellin and McKinnon debut.
Yep.
Merrin's probably the biggest name before that. Merrin and Pryor.
But in the last 5 years, the player that we let go was Reece Robson.
Yeah.
And like I say, he's an ex-Australian schoolboy, and they let him go. Now, they obviously let him go because they probably looked at who they'd just bought, the hookers that they had coming online from other clubs and whatnot, and probably thought, well, there's another 2 years left in this kid before we can really get a result out of him, so we'll let him go. I think they'd do almost anything to have him back now.
But you'd heard about him coming through. I'd heard about him.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
The talk was like, this is the guy.
Yeah, he's the next
and
big
they brought
thing.
McCullough in. Thanks, Griffin's biscuits.
They also had what's his face? Went to Cronulla. What's his name? Came from South to St George.
McInnes, that's it. That's why they let him go. Then McInnes did his knee.
Yeah.
But they moved him. They'd already moved him to lock by that stage.
He was kind of playing a bit of second row.
Anyway, but I thought that underscored where Saints are at.
Yep.
You haven't had a decent forward prospect in 5 years.
Yeah, and we also really haven't had. We haven't signed or retained the players we needed to. Which comes down to coaching and identifying and blooding players and bringing them through. And look, Coach Griffin is like I said in the last podcast about when I talked about Adam O'Brien. Griffin's got his finger on the panic button, mate. We don't see the best moves from the coach when they're panicking and when they know that their time is coming. When your $500,000 a year job's just about to disappear from under you, you'll do anything you can to try and hold on to that job. So that means you'll play people out of position. You'll play people that are busted a little bit. You'll take chances that you normally wouldn't. You'll start needling players up. And the players are the ones that suffer in the end. The coach will either stay or not. But the players are the ones that suffer when coaches get desperate. And the club suffers too. This is why a lot of clubs fire a coach before he gets to the desperation stakes.
Yeah.
They say to it, they look at him and go, you are not the guy for this club. Now, if anyone at St George can look at Griffin and say, you're going to win us a competition in 2026 with a straight face, thinking that that's honestly the truth, I reckon they should stick their hand up and say who they are and why they think it.
Yeah.
Because Griffin ain't winning no competitions, mate. He's a coach that's under fire. He's a coach that's we've seen his recruitment policies. They ain't going to change. He's buying old blokes. He's trying to put spot fires out everywhere with no real solid plan. And that may not be totally his fault. He was probably bought in on a very short timeline saying, hey, turn this around. See, it comes down to the message they get in the beginning. If you can turn this mess around and win more games than Paul McGregor, we'll re-sign you. So straight away, he's under the pump. Who do we need? Oh, we need a front rower. Oh, geez, we'll bring in. How about Aaron Woods? How about Francis Molo? Well, who else can we get?
He played Origin for 5 minutes. I mean, we'll get him.
And so straight away, he's under the pump, making poor decisions from pressure that probably wasn't even his pressure to deal with.
Yeah. But he's this is the other part of it, Coxsmith. He's not going to say no.
Of course he's not, because they're offering him $500,000 a year.
That's the hard bit here, is that he's on a hide into nothing in a lot of respects. And the underscore for me is Saints haven't looked like they're building to anything.
Nothing.
As you say, it's the tread water. Can we stay in that zone? And I guess that brings us to the end of the podcast, which is, what tier do we have them in for 2023? Now, there's I've loosely put down 3 tiers. Now, there's 17 teams now. You got the 1 to 4. So pretty much the teams we think are going to be sitting very pretty in 2023. So they finish 1 to 4th. Then you got your 5 to 10th in that zone of they should be in the finals if things go their way and they should contend. Then you got 11 to 14, which are teams that probably just aren't quite there yet. And then you've got your cellar dwellers, which is 15 to 17. You said 13th, I think, earlier in the podcast, didn't you? Are you going to stick with that?
Yeah, I'm sticking with that. I say 13th, somewhere between 30. I don't think they're right down there with the bottom, but they're not far from it. They're not far from it. It's a painful process that we've seen. I know we've only got 3 or 4 minutes left, but it's a painful process that we've seen Canterbury go through a little bit, and other clubs. A coach needs to go there and say, and whoever's interviewed for the next job should say, listen, guys, please do not expect us to finish anywhere near the top 10 for the next 2 years. I need to clean out, and I need a 5-year deal. I'll start off on a 3, but I want an extension as long as I'm hitting the numbers that I'm going to tell you about now, because there is no quick fix. There's no quick fix when like you said before, when there's no juniors that have come through that you've been able to identify, that is, there's no quick fix. You need to start at the bottom. You need to recruit a couple of, Dale Finucane style players or Bateman style players to come in and change the attitude a little bit, because there's obviously a little bit of an attitude change needed, but there's also talent. You can't win competitions just on attitude. You need talent. And, for them to, they need to clean out the roster of nobodies, keep the ones that are going to be somebodies or have showing signs of it, and just reboot. And then the St. George fans just need to hold on for 2 or 3 years until they start to see, green shoots coming up out of the ground. And that's when, you might be able to get excited again. But I don't see Saints, personally, I don't see Saints vying for a competition, even if they were to reboot tomorrow, until at least 2026.
Yeah, I can't see it next. I can't see it this year in terms of even a top 8.
There's no way.
Forget premiership. But I look at that 13 and I go, it's okay. It's not the worst thing you've ever seen, but there's no competition for those spots apart from really the fullback gig and maybe at hooker. But the back row it's okay, but there's nobody saying, get me in the team.
There's no one pushing. There's no one pushing them.
And you need that. You've got to have that. And I think we wrap it up with the fact that we're sitting here going, it doesn't matter between Ramsay and Sloan, who's at fullback.
No.
That's not good when they're pretty much 2 best prospects,
For me, mate, as a long-time St. George fan, it's disappointing, but you know what? Just like the sun goes down, it's just another day, another year. And until we get a decent board or a football, the football club starts to sort things out, nothing will change. It'll just be the same.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
For the record, I've got them. I wanted to put them in the cellar dweller category, but I'll put them down in sort of 14th in that 11 to 14 bracket. But having said that, Dragons fans, I had Brisbane stone motherless last year. So if I've got you low, you're going high. So that's episode 277, the Dragons deep dive. Coxsmith, I've enjoyed that. It's good to see that Dragons passion. Sorry, that's in George Illawarra passion. Come back to the surface. I look forward to talking about another team next time on the Footy Show. Take us out, mate.
Let's do it again in a few days, mate. I'll talk to you soon. Pepsi.
Off the Footy Show.
You've been sleeping over there?
Pepsi.